Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm combining two things that I really love, makeup and scary stories. And this story that I'm going to be sharing with you today is apparently true. But I'm going to let you go ahead and be the judge of that. Now I found this in a book created by Tom Lyons. I'm going to list all the information down below if you are curious. And what it is essentially is the stories that people have submitted to him, things that apparently have really happened to them in their lives. And if he likes the story, then he puts it in the book and credits the storyteller. So again, you're going to decide for yourself. This particular story that's in this book I found really intriguing, and that's going to be the one I share with you guys today. So if you're interested, stick around because I'm about to get started. But before I do, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and, leave a comment because it really does help me out. Please leave a good comment because I always appreciate that. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay guys, hair is up, eyes are primed, and we're ready to get into today's story. I'm going to be using the Raw Beauty Christie palette today if you guys are interested in what I'm putting on my face. And yeah, let's get started. Roger grew up in upstate New York in a town called Seneca Falls. He was 10 years old during the event which occurred around the winter of 2006. He's found it challenging to discuss with anyone, even his own family members who also experienced the event. The memory still causes him to laugh uncomfortably, and that's something that he's always done when he's felt particularly nervous. It all started during a power outage while he was on winter break. His younger brother Chad was 7 years old at the time, and they were playing a video game. And Roger couldn't remember which video game they were playing. He just remembers that he got really upset when the power outage happened because it lost his progress in the game. The electricity went out every once in a while where they lived, but it wasn't a big deal because it would usually come on, pretty quickly. It never really lasted a very long time. Not long after the power outage, his mom came into the room and she had sweaters and blankets and she got her kids all bundled up. Roger accounts that his mother was always on top of things. She wasn't the kind of woman that was going to ever allow her children to freeze to death. It's basically the mom that was just always protective and very caring of her kids, which is really great in my opinion. Roger distinctly remembers his dad talking on the phone to the electric company. He was insisting that the power was out. To Roger, it sounded like they were arguing. The electric company was stating that everything in the area was up and running, that there wasn't any power outage. Roger's dad went to go ahead and check the circuit breaker, and when he returned, he was even more annoyed. He demanded that they send someone over to check out what the problem was so that he can prove to them that something was actually going wrong. So Roger's brother and his mother all huddled in the family room while their dad went for candles. When he returned, he insisted that everyone stay put because it was dark and he didn't want anyone tripping on the stairs. Roger's mother stated that they hadn't moved, which seemed to confuse his father because it seemed to him that something had occurred where he thought he heard them moving around in the dark, and she was saying that they hadn't gone anywhere. It looked like he was about to argue with her about what she had just said, but then he quickly stopped and had a look on his face as if maybe he'd imagined them, moving about and that, he had made a mistake. And then Roger's brother, Chad, needed to use the bathroom, and there was one that was, pretty nearby to where they were at, so, the mom let him go ahead and walk carefully, use the restroom, but just be aware because it was still pretty dark. So as he opens the door, Chad lets out a blood-curdling scream, and Roger can't tell if he's terrified or injured. He never in his life heard his brother scream like that. So the mom jumps up and rushes into the bathroom to see if he's okay, and Chad's fine, but he's just absolutely terrified. So the mom asks him, what's the matter? What happened? And Chad insisted that someone was in the house and that they had gone into her bedroom. Roger's father called out, "Hello?" perhaps thinking that it was the maintenance worker that had arrived, which would have been strange that the maintenance worker would have entered the house without saying a word. Roger's mother brought Chad back to the family room while their father went to investigate. His mother had claimed that shadows can play tricks in order to soothe the boys so, that they wouldn't be afraid. But Chad insisted that it wasn't a shadow, that it was in fact a man, and that he wasn't wearing any clothes, and that he had leapt right in front of the bathroom door when Chad had opened it and run into his mother's bedroom. And Roger could tell by the look on his mom's face that she was, kind of thinking that that was an odd thing for a little boy to imagine, and she also appeared a little creeped out, which is understandable because if my kid were telling me something like that, I'd be pretty creeped out too. Then suddenly they heard the door open, and everyone had thought that Roger's father had gone out into the street to greet the maintenance guy. But after a few moments, a cold draft began filling the room, and Roger's mother went to go see what was going on. A few moments later, the door closed, and Roger and his brother expected their mother to return with an update on what was happening. but she didn't. There was only silence with both boys looking around. Worried that the nude stranger would suddenly reappear, Chad began looking around nervously, and then suddenly he let out a scream and threw the blankets over his head to shield his eyes from whatever it was he saw. Roger had spun his head around in that direction that his brother had been screaming to see what he had seen, and he saw a long, gangly gray arm slowly withdraw underneath the antique piano. He couldn't believe his eyes. He was stunned. They had lived in that house since he was 3 years old, and as far as he knew, none of them have ever experienced anything paranormal. To Roger, it was like a scene in a scary movie, getting a glimpse of this menacing entity. And even though it was dark and his view was obstructed by the couch, Roger could still see a sliver of the thing's chin. And he wanted to run away so badly, but he was terrified and he didn't want to leave his little brother behind. So the two just sat there, completely paralyzed with fear, just terrified. And because it was so dark and overwhelming, what happened next was incredibly perplexing. His brother Chad moved part of the blanket off of his face and started giggling. His energy made Roger do the same thing. Suddenly everything became playful, like there was nothing to feel threatened by. That even when the gangly hand touched Roger's shoulder, he didn't flinch. Moments later, the entity slid its face in front of Roger's, and it was only a few feet away from his own nose. But instead of feeling fear, Roger just felt intrigued by this strange thing, that he was staring at it and wondered how its neck could be so thin, and just kind of more interested in its features and what it looked like as it was looking at him than he was afraid of it. Still giggling and feeling strangely comfortable, Roger watched this gangly thing approach his little brother and start staring at his little brother's face. Just got really close to him and just kind of like curious about him, just checking him out. Every now and again, for just the slightest millisecond, this feeling of complete paralyzing horror and dread would overwhelm Roger just for a moment, and then it would go right back to feeling pleasant again, that everything was fine and that hanging out with this creature was perfectly fine and perfectly safe. Just seems to go on for what Roger feels like was a very long time. So that when all was said and done, and I suppose the entity had had its fill, it left the room. Roger didn't turn to see which way it had gone, but it wasn't long after that that the feeling of terror came back at full force. Without a word, both boys jumped up from the couch and sprinted outside to try and find their parents. So when they ran outside, they were in such a hurry they didn't have any shoes or jackets on, and it was winter, it was at night, so it was really cold outside. It had been snowing. So outside they went, and as they were looking for their parents, Roger realized that it seemed like the neighboring houses all had electricity and that their house was the only one that was experiencing the power outage. But they were more concerned with finding their parents and avoiding the gangly entity that he just let that go right out of his mind. So the boys went around to the backyard and they found their mother standing out there staring into the woods with a blanket wrapped around her. They called to her repeatedly, but she didn't acknowledge them. She just stood there staring out into the woods as if she was waiting for someone or something. So Roger and his brother had approached her, still trying to get her attention, get her to snap out of it, and they heard someone ringing their doorbell. And they knew right away that it was the maintenance man. So the boys ran to the front of the house, and there was the electrician looking around trying to figure out what's going on, and he sees the boys and looks down at their feet and notices they have no shoes on, no jacket, and asks, "Where are your parents?" Roger tries to answer him, and he realizes that he's having a hard time saying anything. It was almost like he was coming out of what he calls like some hypnotic state, and that it was difficult for him to form words, much less an entire sentence. So what he ended up doing was pointing to the backyard and guiding the electrician to the back of the house where his mother was. So as they start walking to the back of the house, suddenly Roger's parents were there, both his mother and his dad. And they're acting as casual as ever, as if, you know, just a regular night, nothing strange had occurred. And of course, Roger's mother had just gasped when she saw her kids outside with no shoes and no jacket on, and quickly ushered them inside. And around that time, they realized that the lights in the house had been turned back on. So Roger's dad asked the electrician what the problem was and how he went about fixing it. And the electrician had said that he'd never touched anything, that the lights were on the moment he showed up. Oddly enough. Well, it didn't take them long to deem it a glitch, and they all went on with their, their night. Roger can't remember if he ended up paying the electrician for coming out or what had happened there. Just basically kind of sent him on his way, and they went back into the house and carried on with life as they always did, as if nothing strange had happened. And what was so odd to Roger and his brother was that his parents seemed to behave as if nothing had gone wrong. The boys had asked them where they had gone to and why they'd gone away so long and been outside for such a long time, and they said to the kids, well, we were only outside for a few minutes. To them, this whole thing was literally a blink of an eye, everything that the boys had gone through, and the mother with the strange wind and how she'd gone outside and where the dad had gone off to. It was just literally them stepping outside for a few moments. They had no recollection of anything else that had transpired. But Roger and his brother remembered clear as day everything that had gone on. Every single thing, including the entity. If Roger's brother hadn't been there, he would have thought that he had gone mad, which would also have been terrifying. So what does Roger think that he and his brother encountered that evening? After doing years of research, he believes that they were approached by something known as the Rake. Coincidentally, there are more reports on this creature from New York than anywhere else. Roger believes that the Rake has the ability to manipulate the passing of time, also to wipe memories and to control memories, bringing about feelings of dread or incredible joy to keep his victims from running away. Roger still doesn't know where his father had been during all of this going on. The moment he stepped outside, no one knows where he went to. He just disappeared and then suddenly reappeared. And beyond that, Roger doesn't know exactly where this thing comes from. No one seems to know where it comes from or what its intentions really are. And why did it visit his household? I mean, does this happen to lots of people and perhaps they don't remember it? As far as they know, the Rake never returned, and even after all these years, Roger and his brother, they do talk about it every now and again. It's still with that same uncomfortable feeling, so it's not a conversation that they have very often. But to this day, Roger admits that he has trouble going to sleep at night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up the rest of my face while I tell you my findings, and when I come back, I will have a finished look, and we will wrap up today's video. The first account origins of the Rake occur in the 12th century. It is a creature considered an observer, usually appearing while victims are asleep, and upon waking, those who remember seeing it recall it being a very thin, tall, man-like creature with gray skin. It is said that it normally only observes, but will attack if it is provoked. It is capable of bringing about feelings of dread, or deep depression, or laughter, or even unexplained joy. It's unknown what the creature is, what it wants, or where it came from. And this is the finished look. So, I kept it a little more on the natural side today, and I decided to forego the lashes and just do the mascara thing, and I'm liking it. It's soft, it's pretty, and I don't know, I'm digging it. And I'm digging the story. I really liked it. It was very creepy, and who knows, you know, the possibilities are endless. Roger really does believe this happened to him and his family all those years ago, and I wonder, what do you think? Do you think it's possible that something like this could take place? Or maybe it was some kind of strange delusion that the family all shared. Who knows? I look forward to talking to you about it in the comments. I can say that I find it very interesting, and I just had a lot of fun hanging out with you guys and sharing the story with you. So anyway, that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, stay alert.